Good morning, lovely Jill. How are you today?
I am great, thank you very much. And yourself?
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think it needs to be had. I think there's a lot of people who need to hear what we've got to say. And I think that I need to get my screen on gallery so that people can see us both at the same time. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation about narcissistic relationships and narcissistic abuse and can you get over it? And what are the sort of main ways that we've seen in our work and the pointers for where to get started with that. So we hope it's helpful. But Jill, I'd like to come to you first and talk about how it shows up in the work that you do and what are your thoughts around healing from narcissistic relationships?
Okay, dokie, that's a huge question. Yes. So I tell it'd be useful to talk about what narcissism is just a little bit in case anyone's watching doesn't really know. Because
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, Emma, but nowadays it's a word that is used in this so often, and sometimes it's applied wrongly.
Yes.
If someone's being selfish, they're a narcissist.
Yeah.
Or someone tells a lie, they're gaslighting. So sometimes they're used wrongly, although what I think is great is we're much more aware of it. So that means maybe we identify those relationships or those people and then make a choice whether we want to be around them. So I think that can be good. But I suppose like narcissism, there is the very sort of classic kind that we would think of someone who might be very self-promoting. There's someone who might be quite entitled. There can be quite a lot of arrogance. It can be, it's all about them. And that they are unique and special in some way, as well. They need admiration. They often, if not always, lack the potential for empathy for someone else. And there can be a real sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
And so that in many ways is the sort of classic kind we often think of. And we could call that an overt narcissist. It's all out there, you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in some ways, I think those people are easier because quickly we will tune in to who they are and what they're about. It doesn't mean that, particularly if that's your boss, if that's your dad, you may well still have to be around them. But in one way, we know what we're getting. It's
Mhm.
obvious, it's
Yeah.
overt. Where I think, what I think is much more troublesome is when we have narcissists who are overt.
Yeah.
So they have some of the similar-ish qualities, the entitlement, the feeling special, but they're much more under the radar.
Mm.
They might even come across as a bit of a victim,
Okay.
but there's also, there can be a real element of being passive aggressive
Mm.
as well in their comments that are like, they can be quite positive. But there's then a double-edged sword that's a bit of a slap.
Yes.
I can see you. I can see you've seen this, and yeah, so they can be much harder to identify. And the thing about it is that, for example, if it's a romantic relationship,
Mm.
you can be absolutely in it, having seen the lovely parts, maybe
Yeah.
having been love bombed as well, and then it turns.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's there's that part of, oh, but they were so lovely, that hope to get back to where they were, or you really know them, and underneath it all, they're really lovely. Just have a bit of a fragile sense of their kind of like their own identity. And so those can be ones that, in my experience with clients, are the ones that are harder to get out of.
Yeah.
I don't know if you find the same.
I have, yes, and have experienced that. And I can vouch for how difficult it is to get out of it and get away from it and cut ties and things like that, because there's all manner of self-doubt in there and all sorts of other icky kind of interconnected emotions that, much like an outer casing in EFT, just keep you in that situation. It's really tricky.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think because there can underneath it be a fragility that, particularly if you're someone who's a nurturing person, that you also connect with that of nurturing that part. So we can get tied in and kind of so many layers of it. But for me, yeah, that covert narcissism can be more problematic to
Mm.
be around, or also because it could be a workmate, it could be a neighbor that everyone else thinks are wonderful, they're charismatic, they're helpful, they're everything, but actually that isn't the full story. Or for people who may have, for example, a parent that is really well thought of in the community, is really loved. They're so lovely, they're so kind, but behind closed doors, they can be really different. So someone who lives in their home might have a very different experience of them than actually those who live with them. And then there can be an element of no one would believe me,
Yeah.
that actually they're really appalling to be around, or they're really selfish, because
Mm.
out there in the community, they're so selfless to
Yeah.
the public image. So it can be really complicated. And I think it's maybe worth saying that if someone has been brought up by a parent who is narcissistic in some way, there can be part of us that knows, that inside recognizes it in someone else,
Mm.
don't always recognize it as a red flag,
Yeah.
because we could recognize it as familiar.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of somebody who in a relationship is suddenly not listened to by the person who has the narcissistic traits. But actually, if they were never listened to as a child, one
Mm.
way to go with that is, oh, yeah, that's the way it is. Yeah, I'm not worth listening to.
Yeah.
So I think it can, and in that, there can be an element of a trauma bond that
Mhm.
is recreated. So having a narcissistic parent can create a vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I think also, which is famously known, is that empaths are amazing partners for narcissists. It's terrible for the empath,
Uh,
but they're like, now I don't have a cat. I had to ask someone what this meant. Someone once said to me, empaths are like catnip
yeah.
to narcissists. So catnip is like little drugs
It's
of
a plant that is just irresistible to cats, and they're just like, oh, and it makes them all squirmy, and they love
yeah,
it. Yeah.
they love it. So empaths are like catnip
Yes.
to a narcissist. The other thing I meant to say earlier is that narcissism and is on a spectrum. So we all need some narcissistic traits. We need some, what about me?
Mm.
We need some of that. But the other end of the spectrum is like the overt narcissist,
Mm.
or somebody who has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm.
And for that, they would then meet criteria within the DSM-5. So it's a diagnostic, a statistical manual that everyone in the sort of psychological, psychiatric field would use. So that's a really far end. But more regularly, we might come across people who at times in their life could have more narcissistic traits than at others
Yeah.
as well. So having some of these traits does not necessarily mean someone has narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really good to distinguish that because, and here's the, for me, here's the kicker. A lot of people will hear some of these traits and go and wonder, oh God, am I? Because I think about myself in a situation, does that make me a narcissist? And actually, the very fact that you are self-inquiring pretty
Absolutely.
much means that you're not, because the narcissistic personality disorder is right at that spectrum end is no attention paid to anybody else, right? Me all the way. Don't even think about.
yeah,
questioning whether your behavior is wrong. So
yeah,
that's a good
yeah.
sign if you're thinking
Yeah,
that.
no, absolutely. They would never think that. In
Yeah.
fact, if mentioned by one partner to a partner showing real narcissistic traits, they would often turn around with, no, I'm not the narcissist, you are. You're the narcissist. Is a very common, almost playbook. I don't mean to demean it in any way, but yeah, that can be, it's a really good point that, yeah, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So don't panic if you're hearing any of this and you're still suddenly questioning. That's a good sign because you wouldn't be doing that if it was full on that way.
Absolutely. And we all need some of it. Say you're in bed with flu and you're with your other half, you might be, can you get me a cup of tea? Maybe he's tired or he's like not wanting to go downstairs again. He's ready for bed. That in a way doesn't matter because you're poorly unwell. It's like, I need a cup of tea. You know, that so when we're unwell, we can have a bit more of those traits because we kind of need to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it never ceases to amaze me, having been in a situation where there was the covert stuff going on and coercive control. It never ceases to amaze me the depths to which you can drop into shame and self-doubt around this. If you've ever been through this, please take heart that you can come out the other side. You can. And that the shame and the self-doubt that you're feeling, it's not your doing, right? It's not your doing. And it felt important to say that at this point because as we talk about this, I think some people might be listening and going, oh my goodness, that's my situation. Why am I still in it? Or why did it take me so long to get out of it? Or there's all these questions that come up, isn't there, to ourselves as a result of being in these kinds of relationships. Why didn't I see it sooner? You don't know what you don't know, ultimately, is the big thing.
Absolutely, and particularly if the person is a covert narcissist, they're not going to show all of who they are until the attachment is strong. So you may well already be in love with them. Excuse me. But also we grow and we evolve, and all of us humans do it. And that means maybe who I am now is not who I was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
I would not be in the relationship I was in 20 years ago, the person that I am now.
yeah.
But the person 20 years ago did not see the red flags because those were kind of normal and familiar behavior.
Mhm.
So it didn't register as a red flag. And that's often why people can get stuck in there,
Mhm.
but also why, just as you said, at the other end, there
Mhm.
can be shame. And I know for myself, with a long relationship in the past, coming out and almost clear vision
Yeah,
and being like, it actually took me longer to forgive myself
yes,
than to forgive the other person.
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Big- Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, but
Good.
it's also seeing why you are tied in
Yeah,
to it.
yeah.
Um, and it can be really difficult to get out of, but it is really possible in
Mm.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's so important to acknowledge how easy it is to lose yourself in
Oh,
that.
mhm.
Identity is a massive thing, isn't it? In terms of what keeps us in. You may have some ideas about how it shows up in your work, but I think for me, it was just a massive loss of identity. And
Mhm.
part of it was a gradual chipping away. And then
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
acquiescing to that because you
Yeah.
kind of drop into that. There must be something wrong with me if I'm not right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
gradually, that old you, that identity just can fall away. And that can be
Yeah.
why
Mhm.
you then don't
Yes.
maybe feel like you can get out or you don't.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. You can be worn down with it. But I also find in working with people, whether it's been they've had a narcissistic parent or maybe romantic partner,
Mm.
that it can feel like there's been brainwashing
Yes.
going on. You can sit with someone who is really a really intelligent person, has done really well in their work, who is lovely, and they will tell you why they're a bit of garbage.
Mm. Yeah.
But their life doesn't show that.
Yeah.
It's like that early programming, if it was a parent, or the chipping away, just as you said, it can be quite subtle. And that chipping away, that then if you're almost taking as truth what the other person has said about you, then that's why we get stuck. We get more stuck because of that. Because if we're in a place of being worn down, we can take it on as truth in a way we wouldn't have years earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? And I
Mm.
think so. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about the the biggest things that people really need to think about, if that's the right way to put it, when they're trying to either heal
Yeah.
from it. So we're talking about at the stage where you've maybe come out of it rather than how to get out of it. So this is maybe a post relationship thing
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than how to actually get out of it. And there's lots of resources for that. But we talked about reclaiming your voice, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Afterward.
Yeah. Because just as you were saying that chipping away, we can almost lose ourselves, or we can almost betray ourselves,
Yeah.
who we are, or what our values or what our beliefs are, to match the other person or what they're telling you it is. And so that I place, I am, has to be reestablished. It has to be regrown. So there can be that reclaiming of our personhood, and our voices is part of that. Because I think a big part of in a relationship where one person is a narcissist is that feelings are discounted.
Yeah.
A common one would be something said that is maybe a bit unkind. And
Mm.
it'd be like, oh, I was only joking, for goodness sake. Or it could be, oh, you're too sensitive.
Yeah.
You're so sensitive.
Yeah.
So it's almost like your feelings are not okay. In fact, they're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong to take an offense because it's a joke, and you're wrong to feel the way you do because you're too sensitive. For
Yeah.
goodness sake. So we start to our feelings can be discounted, but
Mm.
then we start to discount and not value our feelings. So that I am place, returning to that is important. I am sad, and that's okay. I'm angry, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Starting to, I guess, reclaim those and be able to say no without apologizing, be
Mm.
able to say no with a full stop
Yeah.
in our life. If you have been shaped into
Mm.
appeasing all the time, being compliant, yeah, that no, I won't, I'm not coming there, I'm not going there with you. And it's just done, whatever's said next, whatever's put on. Because there can be a lot of a kind of emotional guilt manipulation
Mm.
from a narcissist.
Yeah.
If you loved me, you would come to somewhere with me.
Yeah, and I'm smiling a wry smile because I recognize that. And I think I'm going to just say this for the people out there who potentially before this relationship or at one point in their lives were very independent, very whatever, and maybe they got involved with somebody who this happened with.
Mm.
And it's almost like you need to get back to that, or you want to get back to that independent person you were before, that person who would never have put up with that kind of behavior. But
Yeah.
that's how deep this goes. It doesn't, speaking from a personal experience, I was incredibly independent, very willful, very bold, very whatever. And the chipping away,
Mm.
you can turn into somebody you don't even recognize. And that can be tagged onto that can be a whole heap of grief,
Mm.
around who you used to be, how it happened, how you get back to who you are or even evolve from there to be somebody new. And so I think compassion, self-compassion is really important through this whole journey
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with you that it happened to you, no
Mhm.
matter who you were before.
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
happen to anybody.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I think that gap between who a person was before and who they eventually became, it can be a gap. And it's not one that can, for most people, just be a leap. Oh, I'll just be back to who I used to be. Person's gone. Yay. It's that there's that you almost have to lay the stepping stones. You have to relearn you. You have to relearn your feelings. If they've been discounted for so long, you have to relearn that if someone is guilting you, you're not taking that on.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
have to learn that it's okay to say, it's okay to have an opinion no one else has.
Yeah,
All of those things are okay. So it's getting back to the flavor of who you were and who you are now after that experience, as you've reclaimed yourself. And as you own and respect and value your own emotional truths.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know about you, often clients coming out of narcissistic relationships can really discount their feelings in the session.
Yeah,
And so preempt something they're going to say with them. I know this is really silly of me. I know I'm probably being too oversensitive. It's all phrased in those ways, and I'm probably being too oversensitive, but I felt really hurt when someone made a mean comment to me. I'm probably just too oversensitive. No, I'm hurt. So and so was really mean to me.
yeah,
Full stop.
yeah,
I'm hurt by that,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah,
So it's that kind of connecting to that inner voice. And also, I don't know what you find, Emma, but sometimes that inner intuition, because I know certainly in situations when in a previous relationship, when I wasn't being myself, I'd almost merged
yes.
with the person to the point that, particularly near the end of that relationship, I could start to hear some of my intuition. I could start to feel something like friction. Something's not. No, no, I don't like this kind of. But connecting back to that intuition, it may well have been silenced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the things that disappears into the abyss when this chipping away starts, because every time you have a gut feeling, every time you feel like something is wrong according to your personal values, rules, needs, etc., because that's what it's going up against essentially. This is what I believe I want in my life. This is what I believe I'm worthy of. This is whatever. When you think a certain something is wrong and somebody goes, no, it's this, and gaslights you or whatever, it literally reverberates back to everything, all the building blocks that make you who you are. And time after time, and it
Yeah.
can be microscopic or it can feel microscopic. It shuts you down like nothing I've ever known. That gut response, all that happens is instead of going, it goes inward and you go, oh, I'm doing that thing again. And you self-blame and you doubt and you
Yeah.
dismiss instead of following that thread and going, there's something not right here. I don't know what it is. And
No.
following it and finding it out and then standing behind it because
Yeah.
it's been disconnected. All of
Yeah.
the things that make you. So that connection that stems from the gut and the that spidey sense of mm, it's dampened, it's blocked. And it's so dangerous and so toxic because you just then you you disconnect completely to everything. I'm going like that because I imagine a timeline behind you, everything, all the building blocks that make you. There's like a barrier between you and it, and you can't get there. Everything's nebulous. And so when you're trying to make a decision off the back of that, the discernment, the interoception, everything is just like off. You're like, I don't know how to feel. So I will just go along with.
Yeah.
And it becomes this
Yeah,
self-fulfilling cycle.
absolutely. And I wonder then if we're saying it's about that relearning trust in yourself.
Yeah. 100%.
Is now, can I ask you, just in case anybody doesn't know what a spidey sense is?
Ah, yes. So really just that little feeling that you get when you think, oh, something's off. So when you are in tune with your intuition, what you'll sense is, and different people feel this differently. It might be that you see a quick flash of an image. It might be that you hear something that's maybe not your internal voice talking, or maybe you are, maybe it is self-talk. You might just feel something in your gut that is like a clench or a, I don't know, maybe a tickle. You might even experience physical, what feels like physical tap on the shoulder or a tickle behind your ear or something. And you lose track of that because you dismiss it. When you shut
Yeah,
off connection to that,
yeah,
it's almost like you put an invisible barrier between you and those signals. They've always been there.
yeah,
We disconnect to stay safe, to keep
yeah,
the love from that person.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But a big tip I can give anybody is start to tune into what you notice around the time that you think something feels off. What told you that it was off? What was it? Was it that you got a physical sensation? Did you hear something? Was it like a faster than you could put a label on it, flash of a visual, a memory? Did it feel like it reminded you of something? Was it a
Yeah,
voice? Was it a perception? Was it a smell? Was it a taste? There's all these different things. And if you slow down enough and just give yourself that permission to pause and go, why am I feeling like this? I feel like something's off. Why? Zoom
yeah,
out and go, what am I noticing? And
mhm,
that's where this energy work can really help because the more you do the energy work and the tapping and getting back into your body, the more you notice. For me, it's like a washing machine in the stomach, like a washing machine barrel just going. If it's big enough, that's what mine was. It was like a washing machine in my stomach, or it would be like a little, I can't explain. This is going to sound really weird, but this is how it
mhm.
appears to
We
me.
are a bit weird, Emma.
We're
We
a bit
can
weird.
leave
It's fine.
it.
Weird is welcome here, just so you know.
Weird is welcome.
It's
Mhm,
like a supermarket money tube where you put the money in the plastic things and they whiz it up to head office, or they always used to. I don't know how they do it now.
mhm.
It's like a tube or a channel that kind of comes down and I get like a little what I call a download. So I will hear something and it might not be like an audible voice, but it'll be a
Mhm.
sense of a voice, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Someone's telling me something.
yeah,
So it's not
yeah,
my voice in my own head, but it's familiar and I understand. And that voice connects in with a gut knowing that, yes, that's right, if that makes any
yeah.
sense. So it's part
Yeah,
audible, part sensory for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that backing it up, your gut's backing up. Yeah, that is an important feeling. That's a real feeling.
Yes.
And I think so, and I think it's why the psychotherapy and the EFT together work so beautifully.
Yeah.
Because for me, in helping people recover from being in narcissistic relationships, the EFT tapping, it helps bed in that I am place
Yeah.
much faster.
Yeah.
And also because it's releasing some of that trauma. But I find in using it, clients get to that I am place much, much quicker. So that could be, I'm not okay with that. Client about 15 years ago, who her favorite phrase in this situation became, I'm not having that.
That's a very favorite
I'm
familiar.
not having that.
I'm not having that.
No,
Yeah.
where maybe a year before it would have been, all right, okay, yeah, you must be right. Or particularly because so often one of the things that people with narcissistic traits can do is a blame shifting.
Yeah.
So the other person can almost become the what am I saying now?
Recipient? Recipient. Is it recipient?
Recipient of all their toxicity.
Yeah.
Almost like, and actually psychologically, the with people who are narcissists, and also I will say for the big picture that narcissists are created through trauma. So
Mm.
they have experienced trauma. Does that mean you take discounting bad behavior abuse? No, it does not it does not excuse any of it, but it's also potentially worth saying that. And it can also be the part of a person that that they cannot hold because they think it's too bad or they're embarrassed or it's not good enough. That part is almost split off. So if you imagine it's like a bit of it's taken, it's put over here, it's that's not me. I'm fabulous. And then what happens is in a situation where they might have got something wrong, they can't hold that. So it's almost flung on to the other who becomes the recipient of that was your fault.
Yeah. And then they start to believe that's true. They
And
become
then the
it, they
other
embed
person
it.
starts to believe and the trust in ourself in a person's self goes down. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
awful. And a good indicator that's happened is when your family comes to you and says, you're not you. You're just not you. Your spark's gone, your light's gone out, whatever it is, because other people see us, especially our family, if it's not happening in the family and that's a healthy relationship, let's put that caveat in. They're the
yeah.
ones who see us in our true light. And when they see that go out, it's really awful. And I think sometimes you don't realize it took Coronation Street for me to realize what was going on. An episode of Coronation Street to see it in its fullness and then to put all the pieces back together and go, oh my goodness, and to realize. But once
Mhm.
that happens, you can't unsee it.
That's the point. When you get to a point of no return, then, but in a good way, it's almost like it's done or it's almost done.
Yeah.
This is almost done. Yeah.
Yes. And I think it's important to say for anybody who might be still in a situation like this, please, this is just my experience. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't. But what you've just said, Jill, is so impactful because when you're in it and you're struggling to get out of it, there
Yeah.
is a tipping point. And when you reach that tipping point, that decision will be the easiest one you ever make.
Mhm.
But you will reach a point where it all adds up and you see it. It's almost you'll experience it how you experience it. But I saw it all as like a web. Oh my God. Like I
Mhm.
could see it really clearly. And then
Yeah.
once you know that, that's almost like the switch for
Yeah.
those spidey senses to come back on, for you to reconnect
Reconnect.
through that
Mhm.
breach and go, right, hang on a minute. And you
Mhm.
start thinking then, or at least I did, what am I really about? What do I value? What's actually important to me? And then you
Mhm.
start bit by bit just rebuilding that bridge. But you do often people need holding and supporting through that, which is where the likes of Jill and I come in because we recognize it. But I think never underestimate the energetic imprints and the somatic fallout because it will leave imprints on you. They will go.
Yeah.
You need to recognize the somatic fallout. So let me
Yeah.
take money as an example here, nothing to do with narcissism necessarily. If you've got debt or you've got money issues, whenever the phone goes off and there's a notification from your bank, let's say, bang, it's a
Yeah.
trigger. And you
Yeah.
can get straight back into that stress response.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in this kind of a situation, you
Mhm.
could be straight back into that self-doubt that it must be me. I readjusting to their whatever time scale,
Yeah.
demands, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that can be what keeps pulling you back towards that. And so
Yeah.
when you're working with the somatic fallout and the
Mhm.
imprints
Yeah.
alongside the therapeutic angle and the exploration and the self-validation and the self-trust and the identity work, I think that's what's really powerful because it's like you said, Jill, reclaiming that identity and that sovereignty of I'm allowed to feel this way. I don't need telling what I can and can't feel. It's okay to be hurt. It's not comparable to anybody. It doesn't take from anybody.
Yeah.
Because you hear a
Yeah.
lot of people
Yeah.
say, and I did, people have it worse than me.
Mhm.
And
It's
it's all relative, right? Your experience is yours and it's valuable and it's relative.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Dismiss it.
No.
But we're taught to dismiss it, aren't we? Bit by bit.
Yeah, we are. And I think like that tipping point that we were talking about, just to say for some people, and I probably came into this category a bit, part of me had inside gone, I think this is done. But it took me time
Oh, same
to get to that place.
here.
So I had that inner knowing,
Yeah.
and sometimes I didn't want to know it. Oh, there must be a way through.
Yes.
but inside I knew. But it took me a while
Yeah.
to then get the point of I it's done, and as in we're finished now, not as in trying to keep it going, just done, it's done,
That's a
finished.
really good thing to call out, finished. And that process can take a lot of different
Yeah,
timescales for different people. It took a few years for me from that
yeah,
point at which I
yeah,
knew that it
yeah,
was done
yeah,
to
yeah,
me actually making that decision that just then went,
yeah,
now it's finished.
yeah,
That's sometimes it
absolutely.
takes your body chance to catch up because you're still caught in,
You're still very dysregulated by it, even once you are finished. And again, this could be that you've moved work because you had a boss who's a narcissist. It may be that you might have even had to go non-contact with somebody in your life because of this. There can be a real liberation in it's finished because a chapter's finishing, you're moving on to something different. But there also can be a huge amount of grief in that for what it could have been, particularly if the person has been a covert narcissist. You will have had lovely times with them
yeah,
and you will grieve for that part. So there is potentially for people liberation, fear as well, but the grief is also there. And I think within that, the self-blame can come in, which we were talking about, excuse me, earlier. But I think that dysregulation that can even happen from a text from that person, maybe you're sorting out practical things or logistics, like immediately the nervous system's into fight and flight. And I think with EFT, there's the ability of retraining that back down into safety.
yeah,
That it's
yeah,
that double of that growing that I am place in our mind and our heart, but also in our energy. And do you know what I was thinking? One thing we've not mentioned, maybe just to, is almost the decompression process from gaslighting and manipulation. We've touched on it a wee bit.
yeah.
Is that worth just a quick?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Because often gaslighting, again, it's a word that so many people say, but they often can say it wrongly.
Mm,
Oh, my boyfriend said he'd be home from work at 5 and he didn't come till 7. He was gaslighting me. Gaslighting is not just a lie. Gaslighting is much more insidious, isn't it? For example, sadly, we don't live near each other. Imagine if we lived near each other, it'd be so fabulous.
it would.
But say we did, and say yesterday I visited you, rang your doorbell, and chatted to you for 5 minutes on the doorstep, and then went away.
Yeah.
And say today, you might say to me, "Oh, Jill, when you said yesterday, when you were on the doorstep," and I'm like, "I didn't see you yesterday, Emma."
Yeah.
So it's a lot more insidious, and it actually can be crazy making.
Yeah. It's intentful, isn't it? There's intent
Oh,
behind it to make you
yeah.
doubt and make you, yeah, make you
Yeah.
take effectively.
Absolutely. It's like you imagine that, Emma. And so there can be a decompression from all of that and a healing from it and almost realigning.
Yeah.
But again, as we said, that reclaiming your own voice and rebuilding that sense of safety and self-trust
Mm.
means that, I don't know, if you did encounter that person and they gaslit you or someone else, you'd be like, no, I can tell you 100%. Jill, you were on my doorstep yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's solid.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's that thing, the intuition
Excuse me.
and the self-awareness and that inner knowing. People
Yeah.
might call it inner knowing as well. It
Yeah.
lands like, yeah, no, there's no doubt in my mind. You can
Yeah.
feel it in your body, can't you? The difference between
Yeah.
when you feel like that and when you go,
Yeah.
it's that kind of,
Yeah.
it's that kind of difference. One feels nebulous, the other feels solid,
Yeah. It's,
landed.
yeah. Yeah. Or as an ex-client, we'd say, no, I'm not having that.
Not, yeah.
Not having that. No.
I
Ah,
love it. And we are going to do a tapping on this. There is an additional video that we will point you to, and you can work through this. It's only going to be brief. And I guess the aim for that is to help people who are trying to heal from, and maybe it'll bring in aspects of that shame and that self-doubt and reclaiming that I am and that identity, and I guess a bit of compassion, maybe even some self-forgiveness in there.
It's so needed. We do our best at every point in time. I don't live, thank God, I'm a lot more experienced and savvy than I was as a 19, 20, 21. I'd have never got into certain situations. But also knowing that if you are feeling that yourself about a relationship you've been in, it's all of us.
Yeah.
It's all of us.
You're not alone.
Yeah. And so that's important to know. I think also the tapping we're about to do, whether it's for yourself that you're coming out, whether you're at that place of, I think I'm done, but you're not at the finished part, that will be helpful. Whether you're someone who's triggered by just a text from an ex-person, it will be helpful. Or also if you're someone who works with people who are recovering from being in narcissistic relationships. I think it could be really interesting as well to see the therapy and the EFT put together.
Yeah, I love that. So is there anything else that feels important to say at this point, Jill? Or are we done for this video?
Be kind to yourself if you're in this situation. You can come through it and create a different life. You deserve to be valued and to be heard, and you can reclaim yourself. And if you're in the grieving process, grieve, be kind to yourself, and there'll be a point where the future just starts to unfold for you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I love that. Couldn't, nothing to add because I couldn't have said that any different, any better. It's just the liminal space sometimes can be hard, but you're not alone. You're not alone. And I hope that the tapping video helps you. And I'm sure there'll be other things on our channels that will help you as well. So feel free to dig into the other video resources that we might have.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.